Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
I am most pleased to welcome you to today's program, and our subject today is one that from time to time we do that we're so pleased to bring to you. We like to talk about travel around the world, and oftentimes we interview people who have traveled to different parts of the world, and they have lots of very good suggestions for you. Today's is somewhat different, but also very intriguing. Our topic is understanding cultures through people-to-people exchange programs. We're very fortunate to have on our program today Mr. Jeff Thomas, who is the president and CEO of People-to-People Ambassador Programs in Spokane, Washington. Last year, over 18,000 young people were sent around the world through this program. And I should add that this program was initiated of the idea by the late President Dwight Eisenhower, and it has really blossomed over the years. Jeff, I know you have a very busy schedule, and thank you for coming from Spokane over to Coeur d'Alene to share this with our people today, and we very much look forward to the interview.
Thank you, Tony.
And it's always I'm very pleased to have regular panelist Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and I shall invite Janelle to commence the questioning with our guest today.
Jeff, we're happy to have you here today to talk about the People-to-People program. Can you tell us a little bit about the components of People-to-People generally, nationally?
Sure. People-to-People, as Tony mentioned, was started by Dwight Eisenhower. And his concept was quite simple, that if you brought people into face-to-face contact with each other around the world, you'd have much less likelihood of another world war breaking out. He'd seen firsthand the horrors of World War II. He'd been in the concentration camps. While he was president, there was a great fear that there was a nuclear war was going to break out. And again, he thought the best thing to do was let the governments get out of the way and let people get together and bring peace around the world. That idea has gone forward for a long time and taken many different forms. And today what it amounts to is sending out, as Tony mentioned, thousands of young people to about 40 different countries around the world on 2 to 3 week programs to meet with their counterparts. And the programs basically have 3 pieces to them. One is the people-to-people contact. They might visit schools, they might visit hospitals, they'll stay in a home. They do some touring, and then they have some time by themselves to do some exploring and personal growth as well.
So there are various kinds of programs. Can people choose where they want to go?
In general, yes, but one of the unique parts about our program is people are chaperoned from beginning to end. So if we offer a program in Spokane, Washington, usually it's a group of 30 or 40 students traveling from Spokane together to the same destinations. That way they stay with the same teachers, the same peers throughout, and they're able to train and orient themselves together.
Now, who would the teachers be? Would those be teachers from their own local community, or would they be teachers that they meet there?
No, they're teachers that come from their own local community. And before the students travel, actually, they have 12 hours of class time, 6 2-hour orientation sessions to learn about where they're going to visit. And it kind of brings them together as a group and breaks down barriers amongst themselves, and also just to learn about international travel before they undertake it.
Do they have to have some additional chaperones as well?
Once they're overseas, they have additional chaperones. There's different tour guides and sometimes student hosts overseas. But in general, you're taking junior high and high school kids around the world, and with 18,000, we've got a lot of teenager nights overseas, and we want to make sure we've got enough supervision for them.
Do you also have programs that go from one place to another within the United States?
We do a limited amount of domestic travel, but we start with fifth and sixth graders going to places like our national parks, Yosemite and Yellowstone, or Hawaii, Alaska, the southwest parts of the United States, where there's not as much, students might not have as much chance to frequent, a little bit more out of the way places.
That brings up another question. What age groups does your program involve?
As young as 5th grade and all the way up to seniors in high school.
Also, because of the travel and extension of being there and responsibilities here in school, most of your young people, they're going in the summertime, is that correct?
Correct. That's the height of our summer travel.
Yeah,
our season is summer.
It's from when to when?
The first trips usually leave late May, and they go all the way through August. Mm-hmm. And it depends on school closure dates when they actually leave.
Sure. And a particular group of students aren't there that whole time, but you have different groups going at different times during that block of time.
Correct. There are 3-week programs in general, and about 30 to 40 students on the trip.
Mm-hmm. I think that this time would be a wonderful time to show the video. You gave us some video, and visuals are so helpful to people. And at this time, I'll ask our staff to run the video, which is a very short excerpt from your promotion. And if they'll do that this time, we really appreciate it.
on virtually every continent around the world. Young Americans from all backgrounds, races, and regions in the United States are taking on the challenge.
The bonds you make between yourself and people from other countries can really last a lifetime.
They're learning about our world and themselves.
I learned a lot. I loved going. I would go again in a heartbeat.
And they're upholding a 40-year tradition of peace and understanding.
It's really connecting the world, I think.
They are the latest generation to earn the title, People to People Student Ambassador.
On a scale of 1 to 10, it's got to be a 10.
We certainly can see from that short video that they are going to a lot of places in the world, and they seem very happy, and in many ways it changes their life. Would you share a little bit with our viewers some of the stories about young people after being there for even a short period of time, and how that may affect them? You've already indicated that President Eisenhower said people getting to know one another will create understanding between the cultures, but how about on a very personal basis? What kind of testimonials do you have from some of your students?
Well, it's interesting. We have a number of different stories come back to us. In fact, this summer we had a new program where it was called the Special Correspondent Program, where students were able to become a special correspondent for People to People on their programs and write about their trip or do a photo essay or video or a website. And this year, over 100 students took up that opportunity. And the stories broke down into a few different themes, but I think probably the best way to really give you a personal example is we did something new last year. We gave away one scholarship to a person from Spokane, from Sheridan School, a 6th grade girl. About 70 or 75 different students entered the contest. And we asked them a simple question, is to write an essay about what would you do with this experience and how might it change your life if you're able to go on one of these trips. And a young girl in 6th grade named Tana Todd won the scholarship. She went on a program that went to Madrid, Paris, and Rome. So she went throughout Western Europe. She went this summer, and we actually had her come back and do a short presentation to the entire company just a week ago. And she's in 7th grade now, and I guess the headline of it all is, here was a girl who'd never been outside the country, and all she could think about was how she wanted to go back outside the country again. And it changed her view. It changed her view on what it meant to be an American, on what it meant to go overseas, what it meant to come back. And the funny things, the things that had the impact weren't the things you would think of. It was the host family that she stayed with. She went out with the sister, and they went to a bunch of bakeries in France. It was the bus driver who took time to kind of take her down some back streets and give her some little history about the French partisans in World War II in the different towns. It was going through Rome and seeing where so many great historical events had happened, and that it was just like another city anywhere in the world. So one of her ideas, and she's very young, but that it gave her an interest to travel in the future and yes, and to interchange with different cultures. Yes. We're taping this program sometime before it will air. We're taping it the first week of October, and it will air the last Saturday and Sunday on the different stations in October, so things can happen between now and then. But we've all gone through just a traumatic time, and with this terrible bombings that took place with the hijackers in New York and Washington, D.C., and our whole country's been so saddened, and we're so concerned, and it's affected, at the time of taking the show, travel, obviously, to a significant extent. As you plan for next summer and your young people, I know this is of great concern to you. How has your staff already started talking about how this may affect the People-to-People program? Well, it's interesting. The first and most important thing is the safety and security of our students on the program. And so we've actually retained a firm overseas that specializes in those topics and giving us better information and understanding that. We also have a number of contacts at the State Department that we talk to. So the first thing we do is do we need to take, is it safe to travel? If it's safe to travel, do we need to take additional measures? The second thing we're looking at is why people travel. Are they going to be worried about going overseas or not? And what we've found is we've had a number of people come to us and say, we think it's more important than ever to travel. We think part of the reason this happened is because there's this irrational hatred between two cultures that they want to kill each other. And we've had people say, I'm going just because what's happened, and not go because of that. We even had one parent called in, and it was an amazing story. His car had been destroyed when the World Trade Center collapsed. And he wanted his daughter to travel next summer, but her application was destroyed in the car, and he called us up and wanted to know if he could get another application because he still wanted to travel next summer. So here it is, someone at ground zero more than ever saw the need to make sure his daughter was able to pursue an educational adventure overseas.
Are you also getting from some of the parents, and I think you alluded to this already in your answer, but one of the purposes of terrorists is to try to frighten a society, to try to paralyze a society, and by moving on, and as President Bush had indicated, by returning to one's activities and all, that sends a message that terrorists cannot succeed in bringing a country to a change and such things as their travel. Are you getting that from some of them?
Yeah, we just like everyone else think it's important to go back to your normal life as you had planned it before. And there's a lot of people say, I'm not going to alter my plans because of what the terrorists have done. I might take some extra steps. I might alter the destination a little bit. I might think about it a little harder. But in general, I still feel it's important that we get overseas and we participate in the world. On a macro perspective, the United States has gotten itself into trouble when it's taken on a more isolationist look, and a lot of people understand that.
Thank you. Janelle Burt.
No doubt there are some locations that are very popular and more popular than others. What are some of the most popular locations for students to go to?
Right now, and for the last couple of years, one of the most popular destinations has been Sydney in Australia. There seems to be an allure and attraction of going down under that wasn't there before. Maybe it's more accessible. Maybe it's because there's more TV shows about it. But the students love it, and from a educational perspective, it's outstanding. It has it all. It has unique wildlife, it has the Great Barrier Reef, it has the Aboriginal history, it has the whole history as being part of the Commonwealth, a different part of the world. So it's one of the great destinations that is out there.
What other countries are popular?
Some of the other more popular ones are London is timeless, it will always be popular. Paris, Rome, great cities. Where we see a new interest is in South Africa. People wanting to go on kind of mini safaris, also go to that country since it's one of the great democratic experiments going on of taking a country that was run by 15%, now turning it over to 100% of the people to run and participate. And people want to see that firsthand. We also have a special license to send people into Cuba. And so we've had a lot of demand to go visit Cuba, 90 miles off our shore, but a world apart.
So those are all very interesting places. Now, I know that there are going to be some people who are out there watching our program who are going to want to know how their young person might be involved in this program. And how do they get in touch with someone? Do they need to talk with their teacher at school, or what do they need to do?
People come to us in a lot of different ways, but one of the easiest ways is just through our website, studentambassadors.org. We have millions of hits on there each year. And when you go through there, it gives you an overview of the program and tells you the steps to do it that way. We also have a 1-800 number. There's also teachers in the school, but with so many people on the internet, we're finding that's one of the best ways to discover us.
Now, so students may not be traveling just with their own friends or their own peers from their school. They may be traveling with people who are from other locations in the country. Is that correct?
In general, there's some local group that they travel within, but it might only be a few students from their own school, and so it might be 4 or 5 different schools. And we think the people-to-people experience actually starts there in terms of starting to meet new people and understanding that there's differences even in your own community.
Now, suppose that you go to another country and you have lots of fun and you stay with someone there. What about the long-term friendships? Do people continue their friendships once they get back at home? Do they continue to communicate with those folks, perhaps by letter?
It's amazing what happens. All of our students participate in homestay while they're overseas, and most of them continue to correspond in some way, and emails only made it easier. It's amazing. Students are somehow surprised that when they're with a family in a small village in France that, sure enough, they have a computer and they can hook up to the internet and they have an email address. And so that happens. But the number of stories that happen, too, of the family or the sister, kind of a homestay sister or brother they have who comes to the United States to visit them, or a lot of families actually go back to the same country and stay with the family. And, some of those friendships have lasted 10, 15, 20 years. Not all of them do, but, that when it happens, it's really kind of a special thing.
There can be some lifetime friendships developed, you're saying. And some of those young people go there and they make friends. I assume some of those families come here and they somewhat host them at some future time.
Yeah, we'd like to see that happen the other way as well. What the amazing thing is living in America, you don't realize how many people want to learn your language, English. And a lot of them want to come over and say, I'd love to spend a month and just speak English the whole time and feel what it's like to be an American. And that holds an allure and attraction. We see that happen a lot.
we're so close to Spokane here at North Idaho College, and I was, I guess, somewhat surprised. I haven't been aware of your program for years, but I did not know that such a major center of the People program was in Spokane. So it's my understanding that that is the headquarters for all the travel, coordination
Correct.
of the traveling program?
Correct. And we have over 150 staff in Spokane, Washington, to handle all the details of collecting the students, running the programs, and operating the programs.
Well, that's wonderful for the Spokane area because that helps the economy there too, that large a staff.
That's right.
I just wasn't aware of that. But the national headquarters is in Kansas for the overall corporation?
The international headquarters is in Kansas City, Missouri. And that actually has its roots to when Dwight D. Eisenhower left the White House. Two friends of his, one person named Walt Disney and the other person named Joyce Hall, who runs Hallmark Cards, who he thought were the two best people at getting a message out, both through the written and the visual word, set him up at the headquarters in Kansas City, and they've been there ever since.
Because since Dwight Eisenhower was born and grew up in the Midwest, there might be a connection. Might also wound up there too, and
For sure.
friends that he had. With that in mind, I believe in looking at your literature, and you were very nice to send us a lot of information and brochures and the video that we've already shown. It's my understanding that even though the heart of your program would be the young people that go around the world, and you indicated 18,000 last year, but isn't there a component of your people program that also involve adults?
Correct. We had, in the year 2001, we'll have almost 4,000 adults travel around the world, average age about 55, and they're on what we call professional programs, and they're highly specialized trips. We might take a group of, one of the more unusual groups we did, we took a group of beekeepers to Australia. And it turns out that they wanted to go there because in the United States there's been a parasite that's affected the bee population a great deal. And they're starting to experience that problem in Australia. And they went down and visited their counterparts and saw, what is beekeeping like in Australia, and then did some of the tourist things as well. But on that side of the organization, our number one destination is China. And about half the people go to China.
As you indicated, these are professional people that are interested in certain parts of the world and certain reasons. Their stay, is it longer than the students? You said the students are what, about 2 weeks?
Oh, actually closer to 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
And then the professional programs are usually about 10 to 12 days.
Okay, it's a little shorter period.
Correct, yes.
But very focused and a very specific purpose for going to that particular location.
Very specific. And, again, if there's a profession, we've probably traveled all the medical professions. We've traveled emergency room nurses. We've traveled people who help with learning disabilities and education, reading, hand surgeons, cancer surgeons, you name it, we've had it. We've even had Patch Adams, the doctor who uses humor, led a group for us over to China to introduce his ways to the Chinese.
So you're really involved in the exchange of intellectual information, ideas, and so if we add these two together, 18,000 students and 4,000 professional people, that's a total of 22,000. Or is there any other component in your program?
There's a third and final component, which we call sports ambassadors, which is this year will also be about 4,000 people. And these are students roughly the same age as the student ambassador program, junior high and high school, who go out and compete in a variety of countries in a variety of sports, soccer being our most popular sport.
One other question, then back to Janelle. With your comments, it sparks other questions to me, which is a compliment to you. We have other programs like the Peace Corps that President Kennedy proposed, and that's had a lot of value. But of course, that's a longer program, a 2-year program, where not only do you go in and understand other cultures, but you contribute some very significant technology and ideas to them. The People-to-People program, do you ever communicate with other organizations? Or I know the Carter Center in Georgia has been remarkably successful in programs around and travels around the world. Do you have those communications with other organizations?
We work with the other organizations, but most of that happens out of the international headquarters in Kansas City.
Okay.
But it's ironic, the international group is run by Mary Eisenhower, who is Dwight D. Eisenhower's granddaughter. And Carter's group is called Friendship Force and is run by his son, Chip Carter. And through them, they kind of have an informal network of some of these families. We've had events where we've had Nikita Khrushchev's son, and we've had Winston Churchill's son, a number of different people involved, giving a perspective from what it was like to grow up in these times and how the world's changed.
And in relation to that, too, I assume that different organizations can provide some valuable information that becomes part of your teaching or part of your training program.
That's correct. And
I'm thinking of like Habitat, too, and what it's doing.
Habitat for Humanity. And each one of them has, as you mentioned, has a specific focus. And ours is more about introducing people to it. And we hope that they take on more serious missions overseas that might last longer.
Thank you. Janelle?
I would like to, in this round of questioning, just walk through a trip. Let's
Sure.
suppose that a young person has decided to go on a trip, or even an adult. What are the things that they have to do to prepare?
Sure. We'll use a student, for example, because it's a little
Okay.
bit different. And most of the students will enroll or register with us before the end of the year. And one of the things that makes us unique...
They need to do that how long in advance?
Well, they can sign up right at the last minute, but in general, most people are signing up by Christmas time for travel the following summer. One of the things that makes us unique is you have to apply to be part of our program. Right up front, we say, we want you to be interviewed by the teacher you'll be traveling with and supply 3 references. And what this allows us to do, there's a lot of self-selection going on, but it also allows us to weed out the students who aren't quite as serious. I mean, if someone just wants to go to Europe and have fun, this isn't the program for them. If they want to go, and one of the opportunities you have on our program is to get an academic credit, this is the program for them. So they apply, they interview with the teacher. If they're accepted, they become part of the program, and then between February and let's say they're leaving in June, between February and June, they'll have 6 2-hour orientation sessions with the group they're traveling with and the teachers they're traveling with. There's about 1 teacher for every 10 kids.
And I take it in that time they also obtain their visas.
Correct. If they don't have
Passports.
those, their passports. And even funny little things like we haven't packed the suitcase they think they're going to bring and tell them to walk around the block with it once and then repack it. Because there is, like it or not, you have to carry your suitcase a little bit when you travel.
You certainly do overseas.
So you talk about some of these kinds of things, and then the day comes when you're finally going to go. What is that like?
It's an amazing time for a lot of these families. A lot of the families, the parents haven't been overseas before. Certainly the student hasn't. And there's as many students who are more excited than ever, and then there's some who are worried about leaving their family behind. And when do we talk to you next? But when they travel in they have a certain look when they travel, and so they're all dressed up. They meet up at the airport and off they go. And in general, what happens? They talk the whole plane ride over, whether it's overnight or not. They're so excited, and then they land over there not only jet lagged, but now they're a little tired because they haven't slept overnight.
Are they permitted, encouraged to call their parents once they get over there?
Of course they're permitted, and we don't know whether or not to encourage it because sometimes the parents are, it's a vacation for everyone. And so we leave it up to them. But we do supply them with phone cards that are subsidized by MCI and that, so they can call back home. Europe phones get quite expensive, and you get to hear the different versions of what they thought their trip's going like versus what the teacher thinks it's like too.
Well, and it's interesting because for probably many of these young people, it's the most distance they've had from their parents ever.
Yeah, there's a lot of students who've never even spent more than a night outside their home or more than a week outside their home, and suddenly they're on a different continent in a different time zone. And even if you're over there and have a phone card and have the access to it, it's not easy to get a hold of someone when there's 9 hours worth of time difference, or in Australia, 17 hours worth of difference.
So there might be a little homesickness, but on the other hand, there's a little bit of separation anxiety on the part of the parents as well.
Yes, we have we have actually 24-hour staff 7 days a week during the summer, and we get phone calls from both ends: parents missing students and students missing parents, and how can we get in touch with each other, and what time is it there, and all those different things.
So then the student begins the trip portion, and do you have advanced people who go ahead and outline what the trip is going to be, where they're going to stay, and that sort of thing?
The trip is planned down to the last detail. Everything from they in general they travel by motor coach once they arrive. Everything from when the motor coach picks them up to what hotel they're going to stay in to what their meals are. And the meals might seem like a tiny issue, but you have to get a right mix of food the students are used to, but also get them to try some of the local cuisine. If it's all one or the other, it's not the right mix, but you've got to have them try a little bit, and some students aren't going to like any of it, so they've got to have some of the more American dishes to make sure they have enough energy to go on throughout the day. But, for example, when we go to London, one of the unique things is every student meets with a member of Parliament. And we actually usually meet in the Houses of Parliament. And that's something that takes a high degree of planning and preparation to do and make sure the MPs are ready for us and they know the type of students they'll be meeting with. And we ask the students to prepare questions for them as well.
And then comes the day to come home. And how does that work?
Coming home, they're, in general what's happened is they're not ready to come home. They're tired, but they're not ready. And they start loading up on the plane, they start coming back, and they're tired. And unlike the plane flight over, they run out of energy, they fall asleep, and that's the trip for them. But there's a lot of hugs, a lot of tears at the airport because they've made friends, and they often don't go to school with them, but they've made a whole bunch of friends that they didn't have before, and they miss those people. But you'll go to the airport, and then on the other hand, their family's there, and they'll have a sign up, "Welcome home, Janelle," and they're there with open arms for them.
Also, something about the expense that I know that they have to pay. It depends on where they're going, I'm sure. What are some of the general ranges of expenses for the trip? The
programs range from $2,500 to $4,500, depending on length and destination and things like that. And we actually encourage, a lot of the families. This is a little bit more expensive program, but it includes everything. Includes your airfare, includes your meals. We always encourage that the students raise part of the money themselves, because if they're willing to do that, they get more out of the program. And it's the old thing: when you get out of it, what you put into it.
And then the teacher that goes with them, of course, all that's taken care of. You're paying them.
We take care of the teacher. That's right. And we have one teacher for about every 10 students to make sure they're well supervised while they're overseas. And
some of your staff go too, do they?
Very few out of our office. We have people who live in the country who work with us on a seasonal basis, and we go over and do some training with them. So their host over there, or their guide, or tour manager, whatever word you want to use, will be from the local country, the local culture.
On this program, Jeff, I know you're aware of the fact that the clock always wins.
Yes.
We have a lot of questions we could ask you, but time is not going to permit that. But on behalf of Janelle Burke and our staff, we want to thank you for taking time to come. I know you're busy, and I didn't know you had such a large staff, and your responsibilities are far beyond what I thought they were, and so that gives us even more gratitude that you would take time. And we hope our viewers find this program as helpful as we have, and what we have learned about your program, and we wish you well in the future. And here you are now serving with about 26,000 people a year, and over time that just really has a very significant mathematical consequences. And then we're not even counting those who come to this country from those contexts. But again, thank you very much for being with us. And as I've said again, the People-to-People Ambassador Program, good luck in the future.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Janelle. Thanks for the opportunity.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're always so happy to bring you programs about exchanges and travel. And we hope you've enjoyed this program as much as we have, and that maybe someone in your family would like to do this sometime in the future. I hope you'll be with us again next week, and we'll change to another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.